What was the craziest reason a teacher at your school got fired? In high school, FL, for PE teacher took us canoeing. Instead of checking the weather, he brought 15 freshmen into the channel our school was on. A severe thunderstorm hit, and our teacher paddled safely back to school and left us jeans in the water. We tied our canoes together and rowed back to school, but we were drenched and super late. Our teacher was just standing on the dock, not a care in the world. He got fired like 2 days later. A professor at my college was placed on administrative leave because he was charged with participating in the Rwandan genocide and was deported shortly after. He ended up being found not guilty, although I think he's still in a Rwandan prison for denying that the genocide happened. I went to HS in the early 80s in a tiny rural Appalachian town 35 miles from the closest traffic light. We had classes that taught auto mechanics, one that taught carpentry, had a motorcycle riding class and a rifle shooting class, and classes for welding and machine shop with lathes and milling machines etc. The teacher of the machine shop got arrested for making silencers for the Mayfair, and half the stuff he had us making as class projects on the lathes and milling machines was items he used in making them. He threw pencils at students. One day he threw a chair at a girl who annoyed him. Serious anger management issues. And then they found the child porn on his computer at school. Rumor was that he had also been grooming one of the student aides. I haven't heard a thing about him since the year he disappeared. My band teacher resigned and fled back to his home state, but ended up getting arrested on federal charges. He was having sex with band students on trips, and some of them were across state borders. His house was searched, and he had videos. He got 45 days in jail. His parents are affluent and was able to push the trial out several years before eventually pleading guilty. This was after a band assistant was fired for dating a 16-year-old trumpet player while 33. The principal resigned amongst all this. My middle school history teacher, Mr. Lewis, used to invite me and some of my friends, all girls, into his room before classes, since otherwise we had to stay in the incredibly cramped hallway. This was desirable, especially when he let us play with Cleverbot on his desktop. Mr. Lewis was pretty weird. He only ever wore velvet suits with pocket squares, and sometimes he'd randomly start crying in the middle of class. Weirdest of all, he'd make us listen to his love poetry, dedicated to his dead wife, who we later learned did not, and had not existed in retrospect. That love poetry was definitely for us. Specifically, it was for one of us, my friend Ruth, who looked notably younger than your average 12Y/0. He'd always ask her to write notes on the blackboard and stare at her while she did it. The rest of us noticed Ruth was Mr. Lewis' favorite, but it didn't strike us as that weird. Well, one day, it was only Ruth who got to school early. The rest of us didn't come till later. She went into Mr. Lewis' room, and I guess he tried something. Luckily I don't think it got very far. He was put on leave. They brought him back a year later. Fun. He left his laptop open in class while teaching, and a student found child porn on it while trying to play a prank. Cops promptly found stashes of the stuff at his house. When they investigated further, was arrested and is now in prison as far as I know. He taught students aged 11 to 16, organized a student choir, and was even the main teacher for some of the younger classes. This was well publicized in the local media at the time. Not just a vile nonce, but a fucking dumb one at that. Okay, I don't know about fired, but we had this amazing teacher who made applet in 11th grade a blast. He had pill spree boys all over the classroom. Since he had a pretend conspiracy they were always watching you, he made us hug a tree and sing the SpongeBob theme song during a fire drill. He played us a song related to a poem and climbed through the ceiling during the crescendo. And when I went to interview him for a school article, he opened his classroom door that was locked. Classroom was dark, and he was brushing his teeth with a weird hat on and no sink in sight. Refused to stop brushing his teeth while being interviewed. He also had a class feud with another teacher that escalated to him and our class chasing her down the hallway with a chair overhead. But here's the thing, years later I heard he got arrested because he attempted to enter a city council meeting without an invitation and refused to back down. TLDR, my high school teacher was random, funny, eccentric, and got arrested trying to attend a city council meeting. Edit. It was for attending an invite-only charter school meeting, not a city council meeting. My bad. The story must have spiraled before it got to me. Not crazy, but I got a teacher fired by accident. I was in Spanish 2 and was almost failing. This was odd since I mainly had S, B+S. My mom also found this odd since I went to tutoring after class and asked for other help. After talking to others in my class about my performance, I realized a lot of the class was doing poor. My mom called the principal and thought she was doing so anonymously, however she forgot to *67 and the principal knew exactly who he was talking to. Next thing I know, he visited our class unannounced and sat there the whole time not using his phone, iPad or laptop. He then came in a couple more times for 10+ minutes. Next school year she was no longer a teacher and was moved to iPad support in our school district. This is the kicker. I had no idea our principal was fluent in Spanish. He clearly realized our teacher had no idea what she was doing. Guy wasn't my teacher, but I was a student while he was at the school, and he was fired after I graduated. Teacher taught one of the higher level sciences, and after class he noticed one of his students left a notebook. He opens it to look for a name and eventually finds one, but not before he comes across a draft of a suicide note. Teacher has been around for many years and is tenured, so he decided to try and confront the student and help her get help. The student is a junior, 16-year-old girl, and tries to convince her to go to therapy. Girl wants to, and tried to get her parents to take her, but parents won't, because they think depression and mental illness is BS. This made the teacher make the executive decision to cross the professional/personal line and gives the girl his cell phone number and tells her to contact him when things get bad, and he'll be in ear to listen and give the best help he can. Parents get word of this and tell him to cease contact with their daughter, otherwise they will escalate to his superiors. Teacher tries to convince parents to listen to daughter while he has their ear, but they won't listen, claiming it's just how teens are and she won't do shit, so they don't feel the need to take her to get help. Well, girl reaches out to teacher on a particularly bad day and teacher talks her off the cliff again, and parents found out. Teacher gets fired for unprofessional relationship with a young female student. Teacher gets shunned and vilified by community because it's assumed he diddled a teen girl, when in reality he helped a girl survive long enough to find help when her parents left her on an island to suffer by herself. As much as I hate that the teacher was punished for helping save a life, the relationship between himself and the student was indeed unprofessional, as it was too close and the parents had told him to stop. He should have gone to his supervision for school sanctioned advice so he could help the girl and cover his own ass. TLDR. Teacher stops girl from killing herself in the wrong way, gets fired for it. Oh ho, my time to shine. First off, I was a sophomore in high school when this event took place, and I still get a kick out of this story to this day. Our geometry class had a long-standing sub-teacher whilst our teacher was on maternal leave. This sub was, to put it bluntly, not great in just his teaching abilities, much less as a person. One day near the end of the school year, a girl I had in class with me had gotten up and went to the restroom and did not return. For context, the class was watching a movie and taking notes on the content while said sub-teacher was on his Alienware laptop, so the girl's absence was not missed by the students nor the sub. After the end of class, the principal and girl come into the room and force us out. Turns out the girl had seen the sub watching hardcore tentacle porn on his laptop and fondling himself under the desk. Sub was fired and been blacklisted from all schools in our district. So that was pretty interesting, to say the least. I have another story if anyone wants to hear. There was this amazing teacher that everybody loved. We loved the way he taught and interacted with everyone. One day, one of his classes got a little out of hand, and he got frustrated. A girl came up to him to ask him something, and he grabbed her ponytail and dragged her to her desk. He was gone for a month. He returned and he didn't get fired. I guess he got off pretty easy. We were all okay with it because he was a great teacher and he was extremely sorry. Edit. I forgot to mention that I wasn't in the period that this happened in, so I only heard stories that the entire grade passed around. Maybe the stories were a little exaggerated. We'll never know. I wasn't in any of his classes, but there was a teacher at my high school who just didn't show up one day. He was relatively young and healthy, so they didn't think he died or anything, but for a little while people were worried something had happened to him. Then it turned out he'd left his wife and children to run away with a 17-year-old girl who was one of his students. I'm not sure exactly what happened to him after that, but presumably he wasn't allowed to return to work.